What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Morgan Allena True Crime and Mystery. Today I want to talk about a few things about Gypsy Rose that I've noticed recently over the last few days on various platforms that I feel like are very important to talk about, and why the Blanchard family is now aligning themselves with other people that are associated with some kind of murder. And that would be Kristy going on a panel with Chris Watts' sister and discussing the effects that it has on family members. And then Gypsy herself following none other than Amanda Knox on Instagram. Let's discuss this and kind of get into what I think about this and say what I feel like it says about Gypsy Rose. So I did see this as a post on Reddit, and I honestly was like in disbelief that Gypsy would actually be following Amanda Knox on Instagram, and lo and behold, I did in fact go search on her following list on Instagram, and she is following Amanda Knox. If you're unfamiliar with Amanda Knox or what her case is, it's an interesting one. People are pretty divided on that one, on where she actually played her role into it. But basically what had happened was Amanda Knox was staying overseas for like a college program, studying abroad, and her roommate named Meredith Kircher was a fellow exchange student at the time, and she shared an apartment with her in Italy. And in 2009, Amanda Knox was convicted of killing her roommate or being involved in the crime, which that was eventually overturned. And she was ultimately exonerated by the Supreme Court in Italy in 2015. But she was found guilty of defamation in a related case to that. Nonetheless, Gypsy decided to follow this woman, and I feel like it really shows exactly where she still to this day views herself in relation to the crime that she committed against Claudine. So as much as she'll try to go on interviews or whatever and say, yeah, I know I did this, she always has to throw in the little but. I didn't commit the act. She never wants you to forget that she wasn't the one that actually committed the act, as if it really makes a difference. And I feel like that is such an important thing that we cannot forget when we're discussing Gypsy Rose and her case, because that just shows she does not care about what she actually did. She doesn't understand that her actions alone are what led to the murder. Nick would not have just went and murdered her mother just for fun. That's not what happened. Had Gypsy not given the command and given the instruction, Claudine Blanchard would still be alive. And yet she wants to align herself with a woman who was legally, I don't know for sure or not where you stand on Amanda Knox's case, if you think she was involved or not, but legally she was exonerated of the crime and she had a wrongful conviction. Gypsy has said in the past multiple times, yeah, I know murder is wrong, but I still feel like my punishment was too harsh. She said that when she was in her Dr. Phil interview, and she said it multiple times after. She does not view her 10-year sentence, her plea deal, as fair. She views it as overly harsh, and she stands by that statement today. She doesn't view it as like, oh my God, I was given grace as to what a plea deal is. And she doesn't recognize that. She feels that the punishment was still too harsh, and for her to align herself with somebody that was quote unquote wrongfully convicted of a crime, especially a murder, I think she views herself as wrongfully convicted.
Myself as a murderer, because if you think about it, yes, I had a part to play in it. I asked Nick for help. And how that conversation started was, he was saying that he would protect me from anyone. I said anyone. He said yes. I said even my mother. He said yes. And then the plan kind of formed from there. But he's the one that did the actual kill, not me. I can't kill anyone. That's why he's in trouble to begin with, because he's the one that did it. So when they say I'm a murderer, I don't identify as that. I'm an accessory. Absolutely. Yes, I did that. I am an accessory to murder. However, that doesn't define me. I did my sentence. I did my part. I did what the judge wanted me to do. Now that that's over, let me live my life. Let me reinvent myself.
It's insane to me that she keeps trying to push this and really solidify this idea in her head that she really didn't do anything wrong, and that all she said was, I just want you to kill my mom. Everybody says that. Like, no, they don't say that. Nobody gets somebody, and nonetheless, despite what she tries to portray as it being a one-time thing after an argument, this was a multiple year situation that continued until that final night. She worked him over and over and over again, trying to get him to go at multiple points in time. And then aside from the fact that she literally admitted to attempted murder of her mother with the whole BB gun incident, shooting her multiple times, that's attempted murder, even if it is with a pellet gun or whatever. She intended for her to die or be injured, but yet she still doesn't want to hold that status of being somebody that's considered a murderer, and she doesn't want to carry that title as if she's done her, plea deal of 8 years and now she gets to just be free of the title of a murderer, and that's really not what it is. And yet we still have the Menendez brothers who just today, the DA said that they're not even going to entertain the idea of a new trial because of, what they did following the murder, which I can understand how people feel that they don't deserve to be out. I do see that. But also, they were being sexually abused for nearly 20 years. At least Eric was. Before they actually committed the act themselves, and I feel like that's at least a better thing than getting somebody else to do your dirty work for you, so that way you think that you can escape the punishment, which is clearly what she thought. She really thought her hands were going to be clean of it and didn't want to risk her own life and her own freedom because apparently she wasn't in that much danger. Whenever you're in a situation like that and it's really fight or flight or whatever it is, you have to do what you got to do. So that's why Gypsy's case is completely different than that, given that she literally manipulated a man with autism to commit the crime for her, so that way she would not have to carry that title and people could still look at her the same way, because she knew what it was. She knew it was a murder. She knew it wasn't going to be a self-defense type of thing. She wanted to escape. I don't know what she was actually thinking, and we probably will never actually know what her true motive was. I mean, obviously I have my theories or whatever, but we don't actually know what she was thinking whenever she was like, hey, finally, unless she just wanted to do it the entire time and it was all dependent on when she finally thought that Nick would be strong enough mentally to be able to get through it. And then not only is it Gypsy Rose that's aligning herself with people who claim to be innocent or whatever, whether Amanda Knox even is, I don't know. I can't say for sure. I mean, there's plenty of good evidence on both sides, honestly, so I haven't really done too deep of a dive on that case. But regardless, the fact that Gypsy is aligning herself with wrongfully convicted people, legally anyway, instead of, victims like the Menendez brothers who are still locked up in prison while she's out twerking on the internet, doing whatever she wants to do. It shows you where she views herself when you draw the line. She's on the side of people that were mistreated. She views herself as wrongfully convicted. She doesn't believe that she deserved the punishment that she got when she very easily could have got the death penalty. And she fails to acknowledge that. Even with the whole writing to Donald Trump saying that he wanted a pardon for Gypsy and for Gypsy to get mental health treatment, when knowing that she literally turned it down in prison, because we all know that they're all offered that. That's a fact. And then Kristy Blanchard, Gypsy's stepmother, is going onto podcasts and having, discussions. And I'm not totally against this. Obviously the family members of Chris Watts are not implicated in what he did. If you know about Chris Watts, he ultimately had a side girlfriend and then ended up murdering his pregnant wife and his 2 daughters and throwing them in like these big oil drums. Granted, while the babies were still alive, he put those little babies in there, and he still won't acknowledge what he did. He wants to blame literally everybody but himself still to this day. And their family is very similar to how Gypsy Rose Blanchard's family is, failing to acknowledge that what they did was insanely it's not even, you can't even excuse any part of it. You can try to understand it a little bit, but you can't, especially Chris. Of all people, I would never want anything to do with somebody that can murder babies like living children, your own child, in that way because of what, you didn't want to be married anymore. That's a different type of evil, in my opinion, to just sit there and kill and strangle your own children. But I can understand maybe not knowing where to fit as a family member. I can maybe understand that, but still, to be aligning yourself, knowing that Gypsy Rose doesn't even view herself as a murderer either, same as how Chris Watts refuses to take or acknowledge any part that what he did was wrong and blames his wife for her own death, similar to how Gypsy blames her own mother for their death. I feel like at least that's where the Menendez brothers are different, is they acknowledge that what they did was wrong and they had another way out, and there's no excusing that. Even after all the stuff that they went through, with proof, there's doctor's notes and testimony that was blocked from their case, they still acknowledge that there is no excuse for what they did. They know that. They feel extreme guilt, especially because they did love their parents in spite of what they actively did to them. They don't want that to be forgotten. They don't want to erase that. They don't want to pretend like they never did it or what they did was 100% right. And I think that's a huge difference in the way that you acknowledge what you've done when you're moving forward. But to sit there and pretend like you've done nothing wrong and that you don't deserve the punishment that you are receiving is incredibly disturbing to me. And those are not the people that we should be letting out. The ones that fail to acknowledge what happened and what they did or whatever. You should have to honestly pass so many tests to be released from prison whenever you commit an act like this. Honestly, I'm all for that. Psychological evaluations, whatever. And if you're determined to be like a sociopath or a psychopath, you're not safe for society. Period. And everybody knows my stance. I view Gypsy as a sociopath. And this live panel that Kristy was on, I believe she was on the panel called Uncorked with Brandy. I'm not overly familiar with this creator or what the thing was with this entire thing. I didn't actually get to watch it myself, but it was posted on the Reddit group about Gypsy and saying that, they are essentially associating with one another, and people that are familiar with Chris Watts or his case and what he did, his family have been very supportive. And I did see where somebody had commented in there that, Chris Watts' sister especially has been one to victim blame Shanann Watts, Chris Watts' wife, that he ultimately ended up killing when she was pregnant. Basically saying that, Shanann was controlling and she deserved it. Same as what Chris Watts personally says about the whole situation. He does not acknowledge or take any sort of responsibility for the crime or the role that he played in literally ending the lives of so many innocent people. And I feel like that's exactly what Gypsy Rose does. And I feel like, yeah, it could make sense for Kristy to want to reach out to be a part of or get some support, whatever, from people who have family members that murder people. But that should be done privately and not on an open panel, because why would you associate yourself with that even more? Especially in a case as horrible as that. That is a horrible, horrible, horrible case to even want to associate yourself with whatsoever, to be getting advice from the people that defend a man who can literally take the life out of little tiny children. It's absurd to me. And I feel like this behavior by the Blanchards and by Gypsy herself is what really needs to be the focus, and not so much the daily nonsense or whatever, this or that, the other, creator drama. None of that really matters when it comes to discussing this and establishing patterns about Gypsy Rose Blanchard and what she's done in the past and how it aligns with what she still does to this day, and how she views herself truly as a wrongfully convicted victim. She truly views herself solely as a victim, has zero responsibility whatsoever with her part in the crime of murdering her own mother, and she still wants to maintain this lie and the facade of medical child abuse when that didn't happen whatsoever. We know that. We can establish that through the records, and that's why it's very important for people to, stay on track, stay with the focus of what actually matters, and establishing this is a lie, she said this here and she lied about it over here. that matters. And even if it's something that she does today, if you can relate it back to the case, I feel like that's important to do because it shows a pattern. And by establishing the pattern, you can see that she has not changed whatsoever because she doesn't feel she has to change because she's a sociopath. Plain and simple, that's what she is, and she will always be that. She can't possibly change. Whenever you fail to acknowledge what you've done, especially in the case of ending a life, you have to be really willing to sit there and look at yourself and take a look inward and acknowledge that what you did, and that's a very serious thing, to end the life of somebody. You stole their life, literally. Directly, you are the cause of why somebody is no longer living and breathing on this earth. And failing to acknowledge what your role is a huge red flag, and you should not be allowed outside of prison if you cannot acknowledge what you did and take full responsibility. Even if Gypsy wasn't the one to actually put the knife into Dee Dee's bag, which debatable, honestly, we don't really know. I sometimes wonder myself if she did a couple, here and there, but even if she's not the one, that death would have never occurred had Gypsy not created the plan. She started the plan, she maintained the plan, she made sure that it went through and made sure that Nick followed through, put the knife in his hand and told him where to go. Because she had to do that, because he wasn't willing to do it at the first jump. It took years of manipulation, even after she tried to kill her own mother, self-admitting attempted murder with the BB gun. According to her, she didn't know it was a BB gun, was like, oh, thank God. I don't know if I believe her rebuttal to that, saying that she knew it was a BB gun and it was just the edit. No, you literally admitted to attempting to murder your mother once prior, and I guarantee Dee Dee probably was like, do you realize what would have happened if I died? Gypsy, do you ever think, you would be going to prison because it would be out of everyone's hands and nobody would be here to defend you. I would just be dead on the ground and it would be up to the DA to prosecute you. Honestly, I think that's probably a conversation that did happen with Dee Dee and Gypsy. And that's why she was so hung up on making sure that Nick was the one to do the act and hanging up on that, because she seriously thought that if she was not the one that actually started it, then she would be 100% free. Not knowing that her words hold weight and hold value, and they will be used against you. Because again, like I said, without Gypsy, there's no murder. There's no death, there's no crime. Nick is not gonna just go, he never had shown any signs of violence anywhere whatsoever at any point in time prior to meeting Gypsy Rose. That's fact. He has no violent history. It's reported that if he got upset, he would just cry. So it took a long, and despite, whatever fantasies or whatever reality that he may have been living in, that was, I don't know whether or not he could distinguish between reality or not, but still that goes to show that that's where he was at mentally, and that is why Gypsy was able to manipulate him and to brainwash him, and he wasn't able to catch on to those manipulative tactics and connect those dots the way that he needed to in order to avoid finding himself in this situation. Yeah, maybe he can acknowledge it now looking back and seeing what unfolded, but at that point in time, he couldn't. Some people can say, oh, if I do that, I know that's going to happen and that's going to happen. He didn't have the ability to do that. He did not have the ability to deliberate in the way that he needed to weigh the pros and the cons of what his actions would do. He thought he was being a hero and that Dee Dee was bad, that Dee Dee was evil and a mean mother. He thought that she was abusive, and he even said that, man, my mom's not perfect either, but it's got to be pretty bad for Gypsy to want that to happen. I can't even imagine. And he literally couldn't imagine that maybe Gypsy was lying. He tried to maybe understand a little bit, man, how crazy is she? But then he was just going off of her words, and when you're doing that and you're sitting there listening to somebody tell you, oh, my mom's making me sleep outside with the bugs, you know how afraid I am of these bugs. Remember, even though I just told you 3 days ago to set you up mentally and you don't realize it, she picked up on that and he didn't. But she still wants to pretend that she had no role in this and that she was basically wrongfully convicted, much like her new person that she's following, Amanda Knox, and she deserved that freedom. She doesn't deserve to be convicted. She didn't deserve to have to take a plea deal. She didn't deserve to serve any time in prison because she was not the one that committed the act, and she thinks that really makes a difference, and she'll sit there and tell you that to your face to this day because of what she went through. And that's why I feel like we have to keep the focus where the focus needs to be, on the case, on the facts, on the evidence. And if she does something, more recent and it links back to what you can provide more solid proof to what she did in that case to show that she's not a changed person, she's not a rehabilitated person, because you can't rehabilitate somebody that doesn't believe there needs to be a real rehabilitation. You just cannot do it. That's her core belief, that she was in the right and Nick was wrong. Don't get her wrong about that. Nick was 100% wrong, but she was 100% in the right, and all she did was ask him to kill her mom one time, which is the farthest thing from the truth. Lyle and Eric Menendez were 21 and 18, and Gypsy was 24 years old, yet she served 8 years. Again, she doesn't view herself as doing anything wrong. That's why she wants to associate with Amanda Knox, or at least that's my interpretation. She has always viewed herself as somebody that was wrongfully punished, and her punishment was too harsh, and she received a sentence that was unfair to her. Nick got what he deserved, of course, in her eyes, and she wants to maintain that stance. She believes Nick deserves to stay there, and she made sure that he looked like a true monster. And she set it up that way, and she got away with it, and she's gonna do anything to make people believe that she was wrongfully convicted. That's what she wants her stance to be. She doesn't want to be known as a murderer or someone that is complicit in a murder or whatever she wants to. Regardless, she is, and she can't change that fact, but she can manipulate the public into believing that she had nothing to do with it, and that's what she's done so far. And that's why it's important to continue discussing the facts of the case and showing that she's lied to everybody for this entire time, as well as the entire family. I wish I could have been there when that panel was going. Obviously, I think it was like a members only type of thing, and I'm not a member, but I'd want to know. I would have been asking those questions, which, probably they wouldn't answer. If you ask any sort of hard, factually based question, they'll respond to trolls or whatever nonsense questions, because that makes them look like, they're just being bullied and this is how we get treated. No, I want to know about the facts. I want to know why you tell people that Gypsy had a totally normal muscle biopsy whenever it came back as abnormal. I want to know, did Kristy notice that it was probably likely Gypsy actually pretending to be Dee Dee whenever she was messaging Kristy, and they had the ability to be in full contact the entire time? Why didn't Gypsy get in the car? Why did she lie and manipulate Rod into thinking that the police drug her butt home whenever she snuck out to meet Dan, when that's not the case? And then she switched it to being in the hotel room. Then she switched it again and saying that she went to the neighbor's house, which is actually what happened, because there are witnesses to that. And yet they still want to defend her. Why are there text messages showing that they are actively, over the last few years, actively trying to maintain that Nick deserves to be in prison for the rest of his life, instead of, advocating for him to get into like a mental health facility, knowing what they know now about where his mental health was and his diagnosis and his disability? But he's the bad guy and Gypsy's the good girl, and who just fell in love with the monster, like she likes to believe, the Beauty and the Beast. He's the beast, she's the beauty, when actually that's not the case. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think this is even important? Do you think it kind of shows where Gypsy is at and where she views herself in relation to her case and what she's done in her life? Do you think she views herself as completely innocent, as what she said? And she said that. She said that her punishment was too harsh. Where do you think this kind of leads you to now, as far as involving Kristy and the Watts family, having those discussions? Do you think it was just simply reaching out? Or let me know what you guys think down below. As always, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video. And be sure to check out some of my other ones where I go through the medical records and I'm showing you guys all of this evidence and the proof, because that's what's important. And make sure to share these videos if you want to support my channel. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.